welcome to another episode of Neurodiversity with Theo Smith and Friends. And today we're starting a new series that is predominantly focusing on the A to Z of parenting. Why? Well, because me and the incredible Professor Amanda Kirby have dared to write another book. So it all starts with a podcast where we interview incredible people about their stories, about their journey, because what better way to help people through the narrative, the experiences, the lived experiences of those who've been there and those who are at different parts of that journey, right? And some of us will have information to share, and others will be desperate to hear a voice share similar experiences. So that's what we're doing today. And I'm absolutely privileged. I'm really happy to have Rich Ferriman on the show today, who I've met in the past. He's done incredible work as an employee before going into the space of neurodiversity as a consultant, an advisor, a speaker, and also a key element here, a parent. But that's what we're going to hear about today. Rich, would you like to introduce yourself to the audience? Let them know a little bit about yourself.
For sure. Hi, thank you for having me on. This is exciting. This is great. So I'm Rich Ferriman. I am ADHD autistic. I am late diagnosed, so 47 when I started to piece together why my life was. I'm married with 4 kids, 3 of whom are neurodiverse, one of whom has complex needs from he's autistic, ADHD, Tourette's, PTSD, SPD, all of the acronyms. He's also a cancer survivor. So quite honestly, in his 11 years, he's taught us a thing or two about how to survive and how to put your best foot forward in the world.
Wow, that's incredible. And I just think about that journey of kind of the experiences of all the children, but then the wake up moment, I guess, of that kind of self-realization that some of what you're seeing exists in yourself, right? And so I guess thinking about the journey of those different children and their makeup, and you as a late diagnosis, what's it like? How has that been? What are some of the challenges and opportunities and parts of that you've loved? Like, just share with us what that's been like, Rich.
That's a very big question. Neurodiversity is, it's, first of all, we're not broken. That's the first thing. We are all minds of all kinds. We exist in this world where actually everybody is unique. The difference for us who are neurodivergent is that we see the world differently, and we come at the world differently than those who may be neurotypical. And a lot of that is to do with society, the biases within society, and the way that society is made up that says this is how you must be, and if you are different to that, then you are different. I think, the journey isn't just something that just started. The journey, I can remember right back into childhood. I can remember being different. I can remember, overthinking. I can remember over talking. I can remember being the class clown, the one at the back of the class, the one that, wouldn't sit down, wouldn't sit still, fidgeted. And through much of my childhood, I learned how not to fidget. I learned how not to talk at the wrong time. I learned not how to do this, that, and the other. The problem was I didn't learn about ancient Greece, and I didn't learn about the Romans, and I didn't learn about the things that actually I needed to learn about because I was learning about how not to fidget. And I think that is still prevalent. Well, it is prevalent in many schools, and it's prevalent in, a lot of the stats that come out of education now, that actually, many of us who are neurodivergent and with our neurodivergent kids are feeling this on a daily basis, that we feel that we're not supported. We feel that we are being let down by a system. But at the same time, I also feel that we have to self-advocate. We have to go in and talk about strength. We have to go in and talk about how can we be seen for our strengths and not evaluated on our challenges. And that is a really key piece of what's going on in schools right now. It's what's going on with our children. we spent 12 months in hospital with George. And in that time, we really started to see the little boy in front of us, but we also started to see how his hands would tremor, how he wouldn't be able to hold a spoon at times when things got stressful, how he'd react to that, his mutism as we went into hospital, his way that he associated with other people, his way that he would melt down or issues in that way. Now, we thought a lot of it was medication. We didn't realize until later that this was how his neurodiversity was manifesting. And, on top of that, the added bonus of PTSD and other such issues from that time. But with that, we started to look inward, and we started to understand, and we started to see that there were strengths, there were positives. George is now 11; he's thriving. He represented GB at obstacle course racing alongside his mother last year. He was a double world champion in the sport. And Henry this year, all three of them are going to represent GB, which is an incredible achievement.
Wow.
He does the Rubik's Cube in 15 seconds, even when I spent hours trying to mess it up and really just get him so he can't. He can still do that. He's utilizing the algorithms that he understands through Rubik's Cubes and now teaching himself how to play the electric guitar through those same algorithms. But he can hardly read, he can hardly write. There's other things that he can't do. We are upended by, continuous routine, by things having to be exactly as it is, by upset, by meltdowns, by aggression. And, that does change the dynamics. It does change the way that we live our lives. And as he is now starting to, change again into puberty, we're seeing much of that come back, and much of that we have to maintain almost an equilibrium within the family in order to do that. And that is tough. That is hard. I am, can be as emotionally deregulated as he can, and often there can be that battle, there can be those problems, and we have to see that for many parents of ND kids. Actually, they're not just coming at that day; they're coming at that week, that month. That it's the unknown of what happens next, the unknown of what happens if we go there, the unknown of what happens if we try and go on holiday, the unknown if what happens if he doesn't like, or this doesn't happen, or that. Then actually, what is the situation we're going to be faced with? And more than that, it's what's the situation we're going to be faced with by the people around us. And in too many cases, I'm told to shut my effing kid up, or why can't you control your kid? Or just one guy even turned around and said, just slap him, he'll be fine. We've been through those situations over 11 years and that is why, as full circle, I left the corporate structure. And I'm now thriving, loving my job in neurodiversity training and being part of our community, Theo, which is just something else to be part of, isn't it?
Absolutely. So that's fascinating. And I think what I want to just double down on a bit there is the experience of a child going from one space and place to another. And what you're talking about there, one, because it resonates with me at the moment. But it's going through puberty. If we were to look, and because you have the data as a family of 4 kids, right, and yourself and your wife, which is quite useful. And I know you've worked professionally in a good level in, like you said, in corporate organizations. So there's a lot that you can draw from, I think, of the challenge of balancing the parental experience of working hard, the pressures that will come from that, the pressures that will come from being in a relationship and having a family, and then those external factors, and then the change in dynamics of moving from junior school, as we know it, into puberty and high school, that type of training. Just talk about some very specific things that you can. Obviously, you're gonna have to go personal, but things that we can understand, or the people listening can understand, that like, it was like this and it's now like that, or we got to resolve this, we got to resolve certain meltdowns that look like this, but now we're seeing stuff like that. Is there anything you can share with us on the current journey?
Absolutely. It's a really good question, actually, because change, as we know, I would say especially autistic children is difficult. A change of any sort. It could be just a change of being away for a week and coming home. We were away last week and coming home. It's been hard work, because the change again from a routine to a different routine. We love the summer, but at the same time we fear the summer, because we suddenly have 7-8 weeks where we have to build back such structure that he gets within his special schooling environment, and that is a special school which he has an EHCP, an educational healthcare plan, which we had to fight for 3 years. We homeschooled him for 2.5, as schools that he was in felt that he wasn't right for them, and wouldn't understand that actually he saw the world differently. Any change can be a battle, but I think the next one, and exploring this with many parents I talk to, and our own lived experience, is that the next step into secondary school, high school, is huge. And what we've got to think about is suddenly they go from what is quite, in most places, not all, a nurturing environment where we're forgiven for some of those behaviours, where if they're understood by the teachers, then they can have workarounds. That there's more static education, such as they're in the same class much of the time, as opposed to wandering from class to class, going from teacher to teacher. Just those elements of change are huge, and the fear of that for a child who is neurodivergent can often mean that school refusal starts to step in, can often be that poor mental health starts to be a factor that we haven't seen before. We have to start to think about how we can make that transition and step to that transition. We have to advocate as parents. And that's not always as easy as saying, well, wonderful, let's advocate as parents. There are many neurodiverse children that don't know they're neurodiverse. There are many neurodivergent children whose parents have no idea what this stuff means. Yet the behaviours and display, etc., are isolating their child, are causing their child angst and pain on a daily basis, are school refusal, are not wanting to go in, are not wanting to go into difficult and uncontrolled environments. And that, for many, starts a path where we get to 72% of autistic people globally unemployed. And, we can take that stat right the way back to now. We can take that stat right the way back to, well, what is the education system doing for our children? I think, what can we do? I think there is a point, and we've got to, where we have to advocate for ourselves and our children, where we have to be accountable and responsible for our children. And this is hard for some to hear, because actually there's too many conversations that go on in schools which are, well, my son is ADHD, what are you going to do about it? My child is autistic, what are you going to do about it? The problem that we have as teachers are, well, unless there is a diagnosis in place, unless there is, evidence, unless we cannot do anything. And that can cause, again, problems between the parents and the teacher. It can cause problems between the child, the parents, and the teacher. You start to get a negative environment that child is having to now navigate even more negativity, even more challenges. One thing I say to many parents, if they're going along that, is to take away the combative nature of those conversations. Work with your child as much as you can in order to establish where, through a month of journaling, where are their strengths? What do they love? What do they want to do? Where is their attention kept? What is it about the school life that they like? And then what is it that they find challenging? What is it that they find confusing? Is it just being on a school bus, maybe? Is it all going to school at the same time? Is it the homework aspect? Is it taking the information down? Is it that going back to fidgeting and moving and talking and just being constantly told off? Because if it is that, we need to understand that, so that as a parent, as teachers, we can start to make a plan for that child. So a lot is about going in to say, this is the strengths and this is how we've understood the working day. This is the challenge, is how can we work together in that way? And by doing that, as we go into secondary school, and as we go into an environment which is vastly different, which is very confusing, which is all about change and multiple teachers, and it's about grades, and it's about your friendship groups, and it's about not being isolated, and all these worries, all this confusion, all this, everybody's got an opinion, everybody is looking at you, the bullying, etc., that goes on. Actually, we can start to arm our children with an actual knowledge of knowing why. This is why I react to this situation like this. This is how I can excel in this situation. For me personally, I know I never had that. I was never equipped with that, ever. I went into that environment and I hated it. I hated it from day one. I hated it till the first moment I could get out. And, that can be disastrous for the rest of your life. I was lucky that I then worked hard and I did other things, but actually I missed out on academia. I missed out on university. I missed out on those sorts of things. But I didn't even put myself into a trajectory of a different, a trade or an apprenticeship or something else, because I was done with it and they were done with me. And we've got to try and help safeguard that doesn't happen. So for us, as far as the kids are concerned, we journal. We understand strengths and challenges. We don't talk about weaknesses because that's just negative. And that weaknesses carries forward. Let's talk about the challenges. Let's talk about understanding challenges. Armed with, this is the knowledge of why. And just getting people to talk about it. I go into the schools. I'll go into friendship. I'll do whatever is necessary just to talk to people and not be afraid of talking to people. So many parents I speak to, well, I don't want them to think we're all just weird. I don't want to think this. I don't want them to be different. I don't want them to be this. Well, we're all unique. We're all different. Everybody comes at life in a different way. Everybody comes at life with their own lived experiences, knowledge, everything that's happened before to now. So actually, we are all different. And if we're positive and have strength and have advocacy, we can be positive.
So that's a really interesting point there. A couple of points I want to pick up on. Thinking about the advocacy piece, which we'll get to in a second, but also us being different. So do you think it's helped having a child that has had significant challenges where there has been no escape of dealing with it, and I'm just thinking on my fear, so shoot me right down if I think it might just help the audience by hearing some of this about the extremity and variety of challenges you have faced as a family. Has that helped force you into a position where you've been able to explore other areas, or do you not think that's the case? Or I'd just like to hear a bit more about that, the variety of those experiences and the extremity of them, and did that help you overall to walk down some extra paths that you might otherwise have not gone down?
I'd be lying if I said it didn't. Of course it did. I think the trauma of being told that your 3-year-old has hours to live, and they're limping your arms as you're running into a hospital, that really does focus your mind, and it focuses what happens next. But even then, I was told multiple times, we'll save his body, but we don't know what we can do for his mind. Because of the trauma, because of everything else. And I do believe that childhood trauma, does exasperate neurodivergent conditions sometimes, and that's only my personal opinion. It doesn't create them. We are born in this way, and we were born as neurodivergents, and I'm very happy with that. This is my brain type. People say, well, what's it like? Well, it's what's it like for you to live? Because this is my normal. My only challenge is everybody else, but my life is my life. My children, we see the world as we see it. And, neurodiversity has such incredible strengths, such incredible positives. And yeah, it's been, exploring that has become something of a mission. It's become a passion. It's, become something that, I've thoroughly enjoyed getting to understand. Has it meant that that's forced us down? I think everybody, again, has unique experiences. And, your child may not have been through what my child's been through, but it doesn't mean that's any different for your child. It doesn't mean that your child should be seen as, that they are less in need of your compassion, your empathy, your thought, your advocacy, because they haven't been through what another child's been through. At the end of the day, we, number one, should be supporting all children. We should be supporting every single child through school. We should be giving our schools should be palaces. Our teachers should be bathed in gold, quite honestly, and given the adulation that they deserve as people that not only look after our children so we can go about our daily life, but they educate, they love, they support, they do all these things to our children. But, we're forever at odds against education and against teachers because, they're not doing everything they need to do. But that is about, again, us as parents. So I think, even if we don't know if our child is neurodiverse, but we're exploring that, we're exploring what's happening, exploring why, they are and their behaviors like it is. But at the end of the day, there are just some naughty kids who are naughty kids. That's the end of that. They are. And there's a lot to do in nature and nurture. And if they witness certain things as young children, they will display those behaviors as they grow up. Trauma plays a massive, massive, massive part in the way that children develop. And if children see certain things, if they are experiencing certain things, if they don't have routine, if they're not read to, if they're not everything else like this, then that will shape a child. I'm not saying that people who can't do that or won't do that are any less, but what I'm saying is that actually, we have to see that there aren't excuses within our neurodivergent world, that children can just be naughty. However, what we've got to understand is that there are many children, 20% maybe, that will experience life differently, and their behavior will be as partly a result of neurodivergency and the way that they are trying to hit the barriers of what normal social life should be. Are they able to keep eye contact? Can they make that small talk? Can they build friendship groups? Are they secure in talking to somebody? Can they stand in front of a class and present? Are they able to take down the information? They may be dyslexic, but nobody understands that. And they're being told to take down the homework from the board. They don't take it down correctly. And the next day they're in detention because they haven't done their homework correctly. We've got to understand this, and we've got to make sure that we equip our children with the knowledge to ask questions. And when they do, we give them answers and we enable them to thrive. We don't disable them by continue evaluating all children the same, because we're not all the same. It's a very long way, Theo, of saying that, every single child is precious, and, through their schooling, whether it's our community of neurodivergence, whether it's anybody, we just have to make sure that we're sitting and listening to our children and making sure that when they say, as a 6-year-old little boy, in the 1970s, there's a volcano inside me and I cannot control it and I don't know what to do, that we're not dismissed just as a naughty boy, or our parents aren't dismissed, as mine were, as that they were bad parents. Actually, that is the point in time that we listen, we understand, we comprehend, and we arm ourselves and them with the information they need to be able to positively go through life.
So brilliant. So I think there's an important point made there that can bring us on to the advocacy bit in a second, which is blame. So blaming yourself, thinking you're a bad parent, and not maybe wanting to deal with it because of that. So maybe some of the historical stuff about not my child, or I'm not going to label my child, or I'm not going to do this to my child, there's some element of guilt, fear, anxiety, maybe fear of what's happened to them, bullying, exclusion, whatever. And like this protective layer, if we think about social class as well, it's like, and race, ethnicity, gender, like how many barriers have we already got put up to us to put another barrier? So I think there's that element to it. But what I heard you saying there, which I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, or give your perspective, is that like, okay, if you're going to feel all of that and you don't want to have a conversation with the teacher or go down the diagnostic route at this moment in time or whatever else, you still as a parent can and should explore it, because ultimately that's going to empower you to support the child, and ultimately it might help you deal with some of your own trauma and experiences around this, rather than just as a parent going, I can't deal with this, which ultimately is stacking up problems for the future, not just for the child, but potentially for yourself. Well, what are your thoughts on that?
97, whether the stat is absolutely correct, but we've been told just in the last few weeks, 97% of children who are excluded from primary school are have special needs or in some way require assistance. That says it all just in a single stat. 20,000 times a child of 10 with ADHD will have negative comments levied at them than their neurotypical peers, often by adults. We have so much research that actually we're hiding away from challenging the big problems that we have in society. Why are 60% of people that are in prison ADHD? Because we're setting young children on a path that there is no other path, and we have to take ownership. And yes, I think, I hear it all the time. Oh, this week we've got mental health. Next week we're going to have to discuss gender. Week after that it's neurodiversity. I'm done with all these things. Can't we just all be normal? Well, we all come at life differently. And I think, as parents, that information, whether it's information you directly get or it's passive based information that, news outlets, if they get it correct, our politicians, that we're getting the right information into schools, etc. I think if it opens up even the smallest of conversations, can help us. If you think, I've spoken to too many families where, grandparents no longer are part of the scene because that child won't run up to them and hug them, won't give them the affection they believe they desire, or they've grabbed them, forced them into a cuddle, and the child's kicked them or pushed them. Well, I'm never coming here again if I'm treated like that. That child, my George has only ever hugged me, his mum, and his little brother, and his two little cousins. But we have a big family around us, but he's never ever going to cuddle them. He's never ever going to show them the affection that they would love from him. But they understand it. But in too many places, it's just seen as naughty. It's just seen as bad, and it's disrupting families. It's disrupting childhood. It's causing trauma and problems because we're just not open about it. So, it may be that it's easier to stick our head in the sand, but we just can't. And actually, by understanding, let's say, ADHD and the hyperactivity side of it of a young child, well, we can start to understand that routine is fantastic. Going to bed at 10 o'clock at night with a gut full of Coca-Cola is never going to be, but you can't then scream at your child because that's what you've done. So actually, if we can start to think about nutrition, we can start to think about food, we can start to think about sleep, we can start to think about brown noise at night, just to clear the child's brain. We can start to think about listening to all their thoughts and things that are going on. We can start to find sport, other elements which all contribute to the control of ADHD within a child, and give them the sense that actually they can bring some calm into their lives and not erratic. It isn't the cause of neurodiversity in any way, but it certainly can help to manage the outcome. It certainly is in our house. And, my wife is an athlete. We're not allowed we're not allowed anything bad in our house. So I have to go out for my cooked breakfast. But for the kids, George won't eat sugary things. He's never had a fizzy drink. He's never done this. He's never done that. Simply because it's about helping to make sure that his level is here. If we accelerate that level up here, things are even harder for us. So parents who start to understand neurodiversity and start to comprehend neurodiversity and see that there are strategies, there are ways, there are things that we can do to help calm the way and have a more just a safer childhood, a more inclusive childhood, And there's, then actually it's going to help everybody in the family. It's going to bring the family unit closer together. And that's going to help in all aspects of their school life, in their future life, in their work life going forward, because those learned behaviors are going to help. But it takes time, and it's, as an ND parent myself, as a neurodivergent myself, I fail at so many things, from family planning and to finances and to all these different things that go on, because it gets in the way. My procrastination gets in the way. My task initiation completion gets in the way. So yes, we have to work that much harder, but in the end, it's worth it. And I think, without some of those things that we've put in place, our lives would be a lot more volatile and a lot more difficult.
I think the nutritional piece I'm fascinated in, and I'm completely doubling down on that section at the moment, mainly because of my age and time of life, and also because I'm fascinated with the kids and the whole neurodiversity piece, and the connections, the correlations between eating well and the right types of food and moods and energy levels and everything else. You just can't argue with them, especially when we think about a child or an adult who really does need to optimize their energy levels, their moods, to be their best self, right, and to have the best possible life. But how do you then ensure, as a parent and as a family unit, that you look after yourself, Rich? Because so much energy must be taken. Well, I know so much energy is taken in our household by trying to plan for every possible thing that may happen. I'm thinking about, like you said, the summer's coming in. We know what's going to happen with the summer. We're going to have a great time, but it's going to be a mess, right? We know that our child might go away, and on which she has done today, on an away thing. And we know that there's going to be problems. We know when she's going to get back. She's going to have a massive meltdown. We know it's happening because of the disruption. She wants to go because of the way that she is, her mindset, but she will come back, and we're going to have to deal with that. And that is constant. That just is constant. And no matter how many things we put in place, stuff will fall down, not of our own making, because life does not exist for our own, for 100% of our own needs, right? How do you look after yourself in that instance? How do you and your wife ensure your own mental health, your own well-being, that you can have enough energy to be the best dad you can be?
I'll answer that. I want to just go. I just want to circle back on something you said about your daughter going away today, and she wants to, but when she comes back, we know there's going to be problems. That cannot be a reason for them not to. And I think, parents can be the first to almost isolate their children because they know that something's going to happen, isolate their children because this might go on. I've stood at the school gates so many times waiting for the teacher to, he's done this today, he's done that today, he's done the other today. The fear. And you look at it, you see it. So many parents go through that. They know it's going to come. They know that at the end of that day, then, something else went wrong. How do we look after ourselves? I'm knackered. Simple as that. We're tired. We're always tired. We're constantly tired. Because, I'm battling my own ADHD, which is so prevalent now. I had too many strokes last year, whether that was because of stress but that's definitely exasperated me. And I think, we are tired. I think we're coming out of the really tired stage because actually, the eldest one's off doing his thing, so's our girl, she's doing the same. Henry is just a magnificent little actor and does what he does. So actually, they're all growing, and that does help. Lou my wife is, she's a double world champion. She's a literal ninja warrior. And that is what she does all over the world. And that is the way that she brings it together. We built a gym on some farmers' land, just literally have old bits of this, that, and the other. And she trains people on there, a lot of neurodiverse kids and everything else. And so it becomes a passion there. So that's her output. she's got the secret sauce for sure. And she deals with it that way. I'm putting it into my work. I love building businesses. I love doing things like that. But underneath it, we're going like the proverbial swan every single day. And, there is no let up. And to say there is, I think, is disingenuous. We have to realize that parents are fighting every single day to keep the ship upright. And my hat goes off to every single parent that's doing that. It is hard. It is hard. But I truly believe that with more information, with more understanding, with a greater competency of what we can do and how we can do for our children. And it isn't massive, great, big things. It's just the fact that we stick to a routine, that we do. Bedtime is 8:00 and that is it. And it's going to take us time to do that. We're going to understand how we do that, whether we explore things like melatonin for some children with a deficiency. We explore brown noise or white noise because it calms down the brain and means that they're not overthinking everything going through, that we get them to journal before bed because that extracts information coming from their brain, that we make sure that they look forward to that sleep, they're comfortable, etc. That if we can put all of that into place, which isn't difficult, but it takes a grit and determination not to go, oh yeah, go on half an hour, go on, yeah, whatever. We have to stick to it. By doing that, it will change every single person's life in the family because there is more time, there is more energy just to do the nicer things as opposed to it always being a battle. And, I know that maybe some people looking at this just going, well, I just can't. It's just impossible. It just takes time. And there is a massive community that Theo and I are part of that have got your back and reach out to us because, we can certainly signpost you to some incredible people that can help you do that.
That's brilliant. And I think, for the past, 11 years, with one of my children, white noise, a fan next to their bed every single night, an ice block in the summer and the winter. It's been an hour plus bedtime every single night. And I know everybody can't do that, but it's finding the mechanisms that work well for you. Like you may be a nurse and you may start working late at night, so you can't, but there are other things that you can do in terms of routine and structure that can really help. And some will work for your child and some won't. But I think knowing that structure will ultimately benefit them, and that structure, although it's time intensive, it provides you with some assurance that actually if I do this and this, I can control some elements of the stress, the anxiety, and it may mean I have to give some stuff up, and that stuff is we eat about 9:00 every night, which is not when we want to eat, it's just the reality of when we can eat. And so there's all those things that you work through over time, but you have to be in there trying these things and giving them a go and figuring out what works. And I think you're right. Community is huge now. I'd like to see more. I'd like to see more help. I'd like to see more respite care. I'd like to see more opportunities for people getting. Some of us may have parents who live nearby who can give some respite. Many don't, and even those who do, they may not have parents who are willing to, or grandparents or whatever, that are willing to because of the additional challenges that may come. And then, the lack of willing to focus on that routine. And what do you hope, as we wrap this up, I really appreciate your time, Rich. What do you hope for the future? I mean, part of what I'm hearing there is, which I think parents will need to hear, and I agree with, is I think it definitely gets better. The challenges change and the risks may increase, certain risks, but it gets better in terms of like the constant draining on all your time and energy, where you start to see some glimmers of light where the level of independence or the level of understanding around what's going on, and the stress may come out in tears, but not necessarily in smashing a window or hitting someone else. some of that may change and adapt, which can be a bit more helpful to manage as a parent. So just what do you hope to see now in the future in terms of help, support, and I guess your own journey and makeup?
I think, first of all, to any parents that are watching it, you're okay, and you know allow yourself to feel angry, allow yourself to feel frustrated, allow yourself to feel that what the hell's happening, and so many parents blame themselves, so many parents put it on them, so many parents don't allow themselves that time off, which is so important. That time off is absolute. To be able to sit down after 8 o'clock, 8:30 at night, and just breathe. You need to do it. The other thing parents need to do, working parents need to do, is talk to their employer and say, this is what I do with at home. We don't leave home on the doorstep of work or work on the doorstep of home. It's who we are. And actually it just might mean that actually the stress of the day has been because you've had to get your child there at 9 o'clock and it's screaming and shouting and upset and everything else in the morning. Well, do you know what? I'm coming into work at 9:30 because I'm going to take that break. I'm going to make sure I'm settled so that I have a productive day within work. Because actually, if I'm there at 9 o'clock and my everything is all over the place, I'm not going to be productive. And I'm also chasing to try and get the child in school. And that causes stress, problems, angst, arguments, etc. I think, for the other thing, just very quickly, I'm taking the time, but if parents do, in a really stable environment, but if parents do have children that go into meltdown, one of the ways that you can help to get that child out after securing and making sure they're okay is getting them up onto a wheelbarrow and making sure that all their sensory things, like hitting the floor, blood's into their head, their legs are elevated, it's fun, it starts to clear down the issue, the shouting, the problem, the etc. And it becomes something that they can rely on to help them regulate. I've used it on planes, restaurants, God, I've used it in the street because it really does work. As far as going forward, we've got to just keep talking about it. We've got to make sure that we advocate. We've got to make sure that we don't just walk into the school and say, what are you going to do about it? That we walk into the school and say, this is what we're trying to do. This is what we need to do. This is what we would like your support on. This is where we've understood the strengths of our child and where they're having challenges, and try and work with the school, even without diagnosis, etc. Because if you're in that way, I think schools are more ready to help. They're more ready to take that pathway. If the child is going into a secondary school, again, consider that, but also consider where they're going. Talk to the teachers beforehand. Talk about it. Talk to other parents. 1 in 5 children are neurodiverse. There's 1 in 5 sets of parents standing at the gate that are going through the same thing as you are. Talk to them. Talk to parents. Stop being embarrassed. Stop being worried. Stop being fearful. We don't need to be anymore. It's out there now. The cat's out the blimmin' bag. Let's now talk about it and normalize it so that our children, when they go into work, when they go into anywhere, they're not having these battles. It's not part of it. So what do I want from the future? I want us to talk about it. I want us to make sure that we get rid of the FUD from the Warwickshire County Councils and from the ridiculous politicians that have no idea, and the newspapers that just seem bent on, destroying the community, but also from within. The community also has to accept that if we stand and we battle over language and over this and over that and what somebody said here and what somebody said that, we're not going to our goal of making sure that everybody who needs our support can get it. And you, because I think you're blooming marvellous, and the way that you come at this and what you're doing and what Amanda, who is literally one of the most incredible people I've ever met in my life, is doing. I think the more of you, the more of us, the more we can do alongside Tony Lloyd of Neurodiversity, ADHD and Neurodiversity Charity, and many more of us. We can take this on. We've got this.
Love it. Absolutely brilliant to have you on, Rich. Really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, mate. Take care.